Hi, and welcome to Creating a Life You Love with Adriana, where we talk about how to create a healthy lifestyle centered on the Lord. We talk about mental health, relationships. I also talk about different spiritual disciplines like prayer, fasting, silence and solitude, community, and how all of those can kind of work in our life today to ultimately help us to not survive, but to thrive and to create a life we love, not only in times of ease, but when you're also struggling. And you may be struggling through a breakup. And if you are, that might be why you're here today to kind of listen to me give some advice to different situations that people are going through. Yeah, on the theme of breakups, if you're new here, hi, hello, my name's Adriana. And I went through a breakup 2 years ago almost with my now husband. We got back together and then we got married a year later. So, kind of through that and then through other experiences in my life and through books, through other people's testimonies, I've kind of been able to speak on different breakup situations and help you guys with different scenarios you're going through. I do that in, one-on-one coaching, and then I'm also gonna do that today. So, kind of the idea of this episode, I asked on my Instagram story, if you have any specific situations pertaining to relationships, breakups, you can write those in, and then I'm going to answer with, like, godly advice through this podcast episode. Now, I did this for a few reasons. Number 1, I thought it would be a good podcast idea that you guys would enjoy. And also, I feel like it would really resonate with people who feel like they're alone in their relationship or their breakup. It's really easy to feel like you're the only one going through something. So I decided, why not bring what other people are going through on this podcast so that whoever's listening may feel less alone. I get so many different messages on Instagram that are so similar. And I just wish like you guys could see, oh my goodness, I'm going through the same thing they are. And, this is what Adriana would say to that. And so, anyway, I decided, with your permission, of course, whoever submitted a question to just bring it on the podcast. And, I'm not sharing anyone's name, obviously, but I'm just going to get into what the specific person is dealing with and then respond with some advice. We don't know exactly what Jesus would do in every single circumstance. I would ultimately say, seek him before seeking a stranger online like me. But I can do the best I can to kind of point you in the right direction and kind of, steer you clear of maybe some of the mistakes that I've made. Okay, so I'm just going to read these questions and we're going to get started with the first one here. All right. So this person says 3 months post suddenly being broken up with, felt so confirmed by God, still hold so much love for them. Some days feels like they could just come back and we could go forward. I keep praying to get over it. How do I do that? Okay, so this person is asking I guess how do they pray to get over this kind of feeling that, they wanna get back together with this person. It felt so confirmed by God, and now they're kind of just maybe losing hope. Maybe they're just kind of wishing for they're kind of just confused because it felt so good, um, and confirmed by God. So, there's a few different things that I could say here. Number 1, it could have been confirmed by God, but just for a season. Like, God could have been, "Okay, I want you to get together with this person." Um, I don't think it's ideal that breakups occur, right? And so I don't know if it's ever in God's plan for a breakup to happen, but I think he can use like, if we're saying like, "Hey, God, I really wanna be with this person. I really wanna be in this relationship." And God is like, "Okay, if you really want this, go ahead." But he knows that it's gonna end in a breakup, but he also knows that the breakup is going to be used for something amazing, that the breakup is going to push you closer to him. And so instead of him preventing you from getting in this relationship, he's going to allow that and you're gonna feel peace about getting in the relationship, but then you're gonna go through a breakup and you're gonna actually be closer to him. So even though it seems like, oh, well, God allowed me to get in this relationship, he confirmed it, and then all of a sudden we're breaking up, it doesn't mean that God couldn't have used, what you desired for good. Another thing I could say to this is God has made promises in the Bible. If I think of two different biblical examples in the Old Testament, we have David and Joseph. So David, he was anointed by the prophet Samuel as a young shepherd. So he was probably between 15 or 17 years old, and he was supposed to be king. Now, after years of serving the king Saul at the time, he was then running for his life. He was living in the wilderness. David finally became king at age 30. So he went from 15 to 17 years old, God saying, "You're going to be king," to almost like 15 years later of finally he's king, And so even though God confirmed, like, yes, you're going to be king, he had to wait a very long time for that to come to fruition. Same with Joseph. Joseph was about 17 years old when he had dreams that his family would bow down to him, and that he would be in command in Egypt. And he had to wait 13 years for that to happen. He went to prison. Like he had all of these kind of what seems like he went off the path a bit to then finally come back to this fulfilled promise. So it could also be that you will get back together with this person, and God confirming the relationship wasn't him saying, and God confirming the relationship was a promise. And then this breakup that you're going through is kind of just a little trial of like, will you still trust God? Now we have to be careful with confusing God's voice with our voice. This is something that I feel like you grow in, and we make mistakes and then we realize, oh, that was me, or oh, that was the Lord. Okay, now I know for the future. With Christopher and I, our relationship, when we decided to get in a relationship, we waited quite a few months until we felt peace to get in a relationship. And then we ended up breaking up, and I was like, "Wait, God, why did we break up? Because I thought you told me that we should get in this relationship." And I never heard an audible voice. The way I thought God confirmed it was I was seeing a lot of different scripture that could point to Christopher and I being in a relationship. So that was in my mind. Now, Christopher and I ended up getting back together. I think the breakup was exactly what we needed. So yeah, every relationship is different. Those are the few different things that it could be when it comes to yours. But I would be very, very careful when you say it was confirmed by God. Was it God was just allowing you to, you know, enjoy this desire and get kind of what you want to then get the consequences? Was it something that seemed great on paper, but really God has someone else for you? I mean, there's a lot of different things that it could be. Um, I think now if you're wanting to pray to get over it, you should listen to my last episode, which is a full guide on how to get through a breakup. But really just praying every day of like, Lord, this is something that I really desired, that I really wanted, and it was taken away, I feel. I trust, though, that you have a greater plan for me. And also, like, get your mind off of constantly, like, thinking about the breakup. What else can you do? I'm not saying to push down the emotions, but I'm saying to read your Bible, to pray about someone else in your life, not to get so stuck on the breakup, because that can kind of overtake your relationship with God in a way. All right, we're going to another question. So this person says they want help on confusing breakups and tangible ways to remember your identity is in God. So this is actually a very fitting question to. I had a coaching call with someone recently, and this person was broken up with by the other person saying, I feel like God is telling us to break up, or I feel like God is telling me to break up with you, kind of in the way of like whether this person actually heard it audibly or just felt unsettled in the relationship and just felt like it was a good thing to break up. Anyway, I don't know exactly what the person asking the question means by confusing breakups, but this is a very good example I have of a confusing breakup where this girl thought everything was going great. The relationship was going pretty well. And her ex was kind of struggling. He was kind of shutting down towards the end of the relationship. And then one day it just came out of the blue where he felt like he was nudged by God to break up with her. Now he still loved her, and that's also like a very confusing breakup. When the other person still loves like you and when they both still love each other, but you have to break up, very confusing. And I feel like that's very common. Now, We don't know if this person absolutely heard from God that they should break up with you. Sometimes people can kind of use the excuse that God is telling me to break up with you or God is telling me to do this to like forfeit responsibility. And I don't think that's good. I'm not saying this is what this person did. We don't know. That's between them and God, right? But it is true that we are human and we make mistakes. So maybe the delivery can be wrong to someone when we're breaking up, and it can make a very confusing, very confusing breakup. The person who breaks up with you could also be confused too. They love you, but they are, they are feeling strained by the relationship or burdened, and they don't know what to do anymore. So they just decide to cut ties, right? Something in my relationship with Christopher, when he broke up with me, he didn't hear from God, saying to break up. He just felt so burdened by the relationship that he couldn't handle it anymore. And he was like, we need to change something. So I need to break up. Um, Now I feel like, it could be that someone is just running from their problems. They just don't have the mental capacity or emotional capacity to be in a relationship right now. So they're saying, "You know what? God is saying that I can't be in a relationship right now." And maybe they're subconsciously feeling lack of peace. They're feeling lack of peace, and so subconsciously they're like, "Oh, that's the Lord telling me to get out of this relationship." When lack of peace doesn't always mean to leave the relationship. That's super important. Lack of peace can be from other sins that are going on in your personal life. It can be from unhealed wounds, unhealed trauma. And so it's not always, you know, I'm trying to, so it's not always lack of peace is from the Lord and telling you to get out of this relationship. Now, when it comes to remembering your identity in a very confusing relationship, I think you have to remember that you may never get an answer from the other person. You may never get clarity, and that's okay. Um, we answer to the Lord. We go to the Lord and we seek him for answers, and he may not even give you the answers that you're looking for. He may not tell you why the breakup happened. It might be like a kind of hindsight thing. Looking back, you're like, "Oh, that's why." I think the most important thing is anytime you have a thought of like, "Why did this person break up with me?" Like, everything seems to be going great. I don't understand. I think anytime you have that thought, you need to reframe it to, but God says I'm loved, but God says I'm worthy. And even though this person was confused, my future spouse won't be that way. And God is not that way. When I say your future spouse, they could be confused. You guys could go through some issues. So let's just say that God is not confused. He loves you, and just reminding yourself that your worth doesn't come from other people. It's just something that you have to keep reminding yourself. Anyway, so it may be one of those things where, you just have to keep going to the Lord, seeking for your identity from him. Another thing is making sure you're not placing your identity in something else after your breakup. So for me, one time when I went through a breakup, I was placing my identity and getting attention from other guys, maybe not in the context of a relationship, but in the context of male friendships. So you got to be careful. Where are you now going to seek your identity? It should be from the Lord, and it's something that you just have to keep reminding yourself. Here we have another one. This person says, "Okay, my ex broke up with me almost 2 months ago, and we've been in no contact. My choice. The relationship was not toxic. We shared interests, life goals, and connected emotionally. He realized relationships were work." Yep, I get that. And he felt he couldn't sustain that anymore. I was devastated, but God has given me healing. I read my Bible and dwell on scripture. Prayer isn't a chore anymore, it's an ongoing conversation. I've gotten more involved in my church and met many new people. Most importantly, I realized that I put our relationship before my relationship with God. I looked to it for comfort, reassurance, and hope for my future. And now I'm working on trusting in God and His plan. Should I reach out now to my ex now that I've grown? I feel peace about it and I'm praying for guidance. Okay, this person also says that it's unlikely they'll see each other. They live very far away. Um, I hope God has grown my ex like he's grown me, and I'm willing to step out in faith and contact him. What should I do? First off, I would just say that is amazing that the Lord has just completely worked in your life. That you're reading your Bible, you're meditating on the Lord, it's not a chore anymore, like you love to do it. That is just amazing. And that's why I think breakups can be so great. Another thing I would say is if you feel peace and it's your relationship with the Lord. So if you feel peace, then yes, you could reach out, but make sure you don't do it with the expectation of getting back together. Since your ex was the one who ended it, um, that's something that if you do reach out to him, you can't expect that he will want to get back together. I mean, normally if he said he couldn't sustain, the relationship, will that change after a few months or however long you guys have been broken up for? Um, did you guys say like, "Okay, you reach out to me when you're feeling better?" Because since it was on his end, I would be weary about reaching out to him because it is on his end of he doesn't feel like he could sustain the relationship. And so if you are to reach out to him and he's like, "Oh, I really miss her," and then he gives the relationship another try, but he hasn't fully worked through, his feelings towards getting into a relationship, you guys are gonna be at square one again, and you might go through another breakup. So, I would just be wary about, where's your heart posture? Are you wanting to reach out to him to get back together? Do you want to reach out to him to let him know, like, "Hey, I've done the work on a lot of problems that we were experiencing that made our relationship very difficult. Just so you know, like, if you ever wanna restart something, I am here," but also leaving, like, an open hand, having open hands with it. I would just be careful, like, where's your heart posture at? So, with Christopher and I wanted to reach out to him, like, a day before we actually ran into each other. I really wanted to reach out to him and let him know about this, inner healing, like, counseling therapy that I was doing. It was very helpful, and I wanted to tell him so that he could do it as well. So me reaching out to him was the intention of, yes, telling him that I had worked through some things, but also hoping that he could get some help as well from this particular person. So anyway, I didn't end up sending the email because something told me to wait, and then, like, a day later, I ran into him at this Christmas event. So that was, pretty timely. I wasn't the one who had to reach out. And so, not every situation is like my own. If you guys are not going to run into each other, you live very far away. Um, if you feel peace about reaching out to him, go ahead, but don't do it with the intention of getting back together because otherwise you may just be crushed. Again, like I also said, uh, h if you reaching out to him makes him kind of, like, jump the gun and be like, "Oh, I'm ready to get in a relationship," I would be very weary of that as well because he said he couldn't sustain a relationship, so what has changed? Okay, I said all of that already, just trying to reiterate it. Moving on to another question here. Alright, so here we have okay. Hi, Adriana. He broke up with me around 2 months ago, bringing up issues like emotional incompatibility, with me being more emotionally sensitive and him being more straightforward, with the things which resulted in a number of conflicts. There was also the issue of being unequally yoked, which looking back, I agree. We were also pushing the physical boundaries and we're not trying our best to turn each other back to God. When we were talking things out before we broke up, I came out with a plan to tackle these issues, but he felt like the outcome would be the same and he felt more at peace to break up. Let's see. This person also sent a oh, her ex this person's ex sent a long message a few days after the breakup to apologize and thank her for the relationship, and also wish all the best for the next relationship. So that was, I guess, the closure. A part of me still wants to try again after we have spent this time apart, healing from our insecurities and brokenness, and also walk closer to God. I've been praying that God will bring us back again when we have healed so that we can honor Him in the ways that we are supposed to. What I would say to this number one, there are plenty of relationships where both parties handle emotions very differently than the other. It's more about the solution that you put together on how you're going to react when, someone who's emotionally sensitive gets hurt by someone who's more blunt. Like, what are you going to do after that? Is the other person who was, more blunt going to calm down and not be prideful and instead say, how can I say that differently in the future? And the person who is more emotionally sensitive, maybe they need more time to process things. Maybe they need time with God to pray. So it's more about how you deal with things because, Christopher and I have very different kind of conflict styles. I would say he likes to process things. Gets very silent, and I like to work things out like right then and there. And I always think he's mad at me if he's being silent, but really he's just processing things. He might be mad at me, but he's also, processing things instead of me as an external processor. He's an internal processor. So anyway, and so I'm not going to say what he felt. That's between him and God, right? But it could be true that he feels peace not being in a relationship with you because because not having conflict is easier. So that was kind of the case with me and Christopher. When he wanted to break up, it was because he was kind of like, I don't like the conflict. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And then when we got back together, we still had conflict. And I have this very like fight or flight kind of behavior when it comes to conflict. So like I want to work it out like right then and there, but then I want to flee. So I'm like, I want to fight it and then I want to flee. And then I want to like never be with this person again. And so that could be the way with him. He's just tired of the conflict and he feels he would have more peace in singleness. Now, I'm not saying conflict is having too much conflict is good. I'm just saying that if you learn how to deal with the conflict, then that might actually be the relationship for you and you're just running because you hate conflict. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not saying this was the case for him, but he said he feels more at peace with God when he reached the conclusion of breaking up. Maybe that's completely true. Maybe God is someone else for him, but it could also be true that someone is running from conflict and that's why they want to break up. Since he sent this closure text, I don't know if this is something that you should pray that you get back together again. You can give God your desires, of course, but I feel like you need to now work on moving on. Not moving on necessarily by getting in another relationship, but moving on by finding new hobbies, finding new friendships. And when the time is right, he may reach out to you. But again, since the breakup was more on his end, maybe you can text and say, these are the things you've been working on. So he knows, like, you have worked on these things. So if you did get back together, you wouldn't have the same issues. But again, since it's on his side, I think really the only thing you can do is pray. Just kind of have open hands with the situation. Again, I know it's really hard right now, and maybe you loved everything about this person, but who are we to say that God can't bring someone who's equally amazing along, and that we can't have a wonderful relationship with them? So I think that's also something you want to make sure you're not putting all of your eggs into one basket of like, he's gonna come back, we're gonna get back together, because that can also be damaging when that expectation falls through. So that is what I would say to this. Let's see. Okay, another question right here. This person says, long story short, I'm in a long distance relationship with a guy who's older than me, and he seems to want marriage way earlier than what I would want, which makes me feel anxiety. Nothing is set in stone yet. We just talked about it like once, and the time frame he gave makes me feel that way. Also, I'm wondering if it's wise to marry someone who definitely wants kids because I have no desire for it as of now and don't know if I ever will. So, number one thing I would say to this now, when Christopher brought up the idea of marriage, I wasn't ready. I was like, "You know what? I would need to wait a little while more." And I think it was, the summer when he brought this up and he was saying like, "What if we got married at the end of the year?" And I was like, "That's too quick for me. Way too quick." And I think we ended up coming to the idea, well, he was already like whenever wanting to get married. I had to pray about it, and eventually I felt peace, and then we got married that, coming March, the next March. So, for me, I would say I prayed about it and I eventually felt peace. But that's because all our like values and main things, those were like good to go. So by you could have anxiety more so because you're worried about having to face the future sooner. You know, he wants to have kids, you don't. And if you don't know if you ever will, that's something that is going to be tricky because if you end up compromising and you have kids, you may love it, but maybe it's just not something you were called for and you resent it and then resent your husband. And then maybe you guys both decide not to have kids, but then he starts resenting you. And so it's really something that, you need to have the same compatibility on a few main things, like religion, kids, also where you want to live. I mean, someone could sacrifice where they want to live and you can live in two different places, kind of going back and forth. But there are a few things that, in order to be on the same page in life, like you have to make it work, right? So I would really say you need to figure out what is the reason why you don't want to have kids? Is it because you had bad experiences as a child? Is it because you have some past trauma? Is it kind of just a reason of like, you know what? I just don't feel called to that. I feel maybe called to helping other people's kids or to doing something else with, with my life. But I don't feel called to have kids. Is it possibly like I hate to say this, but is it like a selfish reason of I just don't want to sacrifice for another person, you know? And I get that. I don't feel right now ready to have kids. I mean, if it happened, like that's okay as well. I trust the Lord in that. But I think you kind of have to ask yourself, well, what's the reason I don't want to have kids? Is it really a calling that the Lord is gave me to where I don't have kids? Or is it something that I need to pray into and see what's the reason? Maybe I need to go to therapy to work through, past trauma so that I do want to have kids and I will be okay raising them. Yeah, so I think there's quite a few reasons, but I wouldn't be with someone in a relationship if you don't both want the same thing when it comes to kids because that's just going to cause resentment. So take that with what you will. Now, I don't think that the age difference, I don't know the age difference here, but if you're a adult, right? And you have, my husband and I have a 8-year age difference, and I don't necessarily think age is everything. Once you're a consenting adult, right? Maturity level is more important, emotional maturity. I feel like I grew up a lot faster. I started working from a young age. I finished school earlier. And so I just kind of was already seeking guys that were above my age group, um, in just life in the way that I was doing life with people in a different age group, not my own. Does that make sense? So I don't feel like it's always about like, oh, they're, 10 years older, like my parents are 10 years apart, but more so like emotional maturity and that kind of maturity level. Also, guys mature slower. So that's also something to note, for the most part. Another question here. This person says, still working through the emotions of a breakup. We split back in May. We tried to stay friends, however, I feel like he's pushing me away or trying to create boundaries but isn't communicating that clearly. I'm not sure what to do because I don't want to lose him for good. Okay, so I know you don't want to lose him. So this is kind of like the limbo stage, I like to call it. And honestly, this is what I went through in my first relationship, not with my husband. So my first relationship, we broke up and I wanted to be friends with him because I didn't want to lose him. But at the same time, I wasn't always getting a text back. There were times where I was very confused on where he stood, and maybe we kind of pushed boundaries, physical boundaries, and weren't just friends even after the breakup. And so, to this, I would say, I understand. I understand what you're experiencing. The reason why I didn't want to say anything or I didn't want to ask is because I was scared of losing him, right? I was scared of fully going no contact. And I know that's something to be scared of, but think about this. If you there's a reason why you guys went through the breakup, right? And so if you guys stay friends with each other, you guys are not going to get over each other emotionally if you still have emotions for each other. How are you ever going to move on and get married? How are you going to find the person that is actually for you if you still have your ex in your life? And any self-respecting man is not going to want you to be friends with your ex, you know? Like it's just not a good thing. There are very few examples where this could work. Maybe if you start dating your best friend and then you realize you have zero, like physical connection, like zero spark. There's just nothing, no attraction there. And so you end it and then you're still friends. And maybe it just went on for like a few weeks. Maybe that's different. But for the most part, I don't think you can be friends with your ex. And I know you don't want to lose him. And he should be communicating clearly and saying, like, hey, this is I can't talk to you anymore or I'm moving on. But he's probably scared. What could be happening is he's scared of losing you, so he doesn't want to fully say that. Or he may, I hate to say it, but guys can sometimes string their exes along as kind of a backup. So they try out other, relationships. And then if they don't work out, then they can go back to their ex because they've still been kind of in contact. I hate to say that. I don't know this circumstance at all, but I have seen that and it's very messy. So, anyway, I would just say I know you don't want to lose him for good, but you do need space. If he's not the one clearly communicating, you just gotta really ask him, like, hey, where's this going? Like, are we not friends right now? Are we gonna fully move on? Are we doing no contact? Like, I need to know so that my heart doesn't get broken again. Um, and I feel like the man should be doing that typically, but again, I gave the few reasons why the man might not be doing that and why we kind of have to step in and get some clarity, you know? It's kind of like the typical like what are we question. Uh but in this case it's like after the breakup, like, oh, what are we doing here? I need to know so my heart doesn't get broken again, you know? Anyway, I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but what are the reasons why you don't wanna lose him for good? Is it that he's comfortable, you miss him, or is it that he had all the qualities you wanted in a husband, and the relationship just ended because of things that were going on in your life? It wasn't because of either of you, you know? Like, you have to understand, why don't you wanna lose him for good? Because you're going to have to lose him if you want to be in a relationship with someone else, if he wants to be in a relationship with someone else. If you wanna get married one day, you are going to have to lose each other at some point, and it's usually better sooner than later. Okay, going on to more like relationship questions. We have one here that says, "Can you ask God for a sign for that person, like if he is the one?" Okay, I'm gonna try to answer this quickly because I have a really long question I'm gonna get to after this. Okay, I don't think that we should test God with every single decision we have to make because He has given us free will to choose. And again, we should be reading our Bible, we should be praying, we should be in constant contact with the Lord so then we know how He would act and what He would choose. Again, we're not always going to make the best decision, but if we do it from a heart of like faith, I feel like the Lord will put us on the right path and kind of straighten our path to where we need to be. Now, when I was making the decision of whether I should marry Christopher or not, I fasted. I did a 24-hour water fast, didn't have food, and I really just wanted the Lord to give me peace. So I was praying for peace. At the end of the fast, I felt peace to marry Christopher. Now, it wasn't just this one thing, this one sign, if you will, that made me want to marry Christopher. It was other things that came up as well and, other things that I talked to friends about and wise counsel like older women, mentors and things like that. So it wasn't like this one sign of like, God, if I'm meant to be married to this person, make this verse appear everywhere. Like it wasn't just that, it was me constantly going to the Lord, constantly praying and seeking Him, not just seeking His answers. And another thing I want to say is we can also get so obsessed with picking the right one that we get relationship OCD. It's not so much about picking the right one because sometimes we're waiting for this perfect peace, this perfect moment, when really we're just trying to avoid pain. We're like, okay, Lord, if you can just tell me, like, if he's the one, I'll never, have to experience heartbreak or, this relationship won't be difficult if this is the one. And like, that's not true. The sign of a good relationship is, yes, you have your differences. Yeah, you have conflict, but you're able to get over that and you're able to move past it and you're able to both push each other closer to God. I think when you are choosing a partner, there's no perfect decision on who to choose. The Lord just cares about that you invite him into your relationship. He cares about, that you both are bringing each other closer to God. He cares about your commitment, not the perfection of picking the right one, picking the person who's the exact same as you. Like it doesn't have to be that way. Um also, I think it's important to see, does this person have the ability to grow? You are not going to be the same people that, when you first marry each other from when one of you passes away or, the marriage ends. You're going to evolve and change. And so does this person have the ability to evolve and change in a good way and grow with you, you know? I think that's really important. On theme with marriage, someone says, how would I discern if I should marry someone? Or how can you tell a man can lead you spiritually? So, leading spiritually happens in the context of marriage, but there are some signs to see that a relationship when you're dating can lead to the man leading in marriage. Number one, is he prideful? If he is, he might be kind of a very like overpowering, demanding type of leader. He should have love, humility, patience. Does he have patience with you instead of selfishness or pride? I think he should also be maybe someone who is asking, questions about your relationship with God, encouraging you in certain areas. If you have a problem and you go to him, he's not just saying, well, what do you want me to say? He is taking the lead and saying, maybe it's a good idea if you do this, or maybe, seek God, or maybe seek God in this area and pray about this specific thing. Like he's very helpful with your problems. And I'm not saying he's fixing everything, but he wants to help and he wants to yeah, just help you. Also, does he stay grounded in the Lord when he's stressed, anxious, or does he just flip the lid and just kind of go crazy? It's definitely a red flag if he kind of dominates the conversation, if he disregards your perspective just because you're a woman. I don't think that's how it should be at all. And I know there's like so many different, videos out there of just like how men should act and how you should be like an alpha kind of male. And I think that's very damaging because it's teaching men to be very like kind of like dogs, to be very just demanding and demeaning and be like just rude, instead of leading by having humility and by being humble. And yes, being the head of the household, making the tough decisions, but including the wife in those decisions and not making decisions on like buying a car without, consulting the wife. I think that's something that's important. Okay. This is quite a long question, so I am just going to um kind of summarize this because it's a lot. Let me take a sip of water. This person also said, though, thank you so much for opening your podcast to your viewers' relationship woes. I hope you can talk about mine or something similar. I'm very grateful that I'm able to do this today. And yeah, like I said earlier, I hope it can give some light that we're not alone. And a lot of these situations are just so worldwide that that we're it's so silly to, feel alone. Anyway, okay, so this person, basically just to sum this all up, these two people met on a dating app. They quickly connected, they started dating seriously, and early on, he shared the gospel with her and she accepted Jesus. So, she kind of always saw him as the one who brought her to God, um, and kind of took it as a sign from God. Now, the first couple years were full of love and hope, but by year 3, jealousy and insecurity crept in towards another person that was kind of in their life. She became controlling, and though her boyfriend was patient at first, over time he kind of grew tired. And so now they have like cycles of fighting, breakups, begging to stay together, just all over the place, right? And now, after another big fight, she is questioning if she still has a place in his heart. So, to this, I would say number one, does he have is there a reason that you should be insecure or jealous of this other person who's in his life, another girl, I assume? Um, has he given you a reason to be untrustworthy? Or is it something that you need to work through? Is it that you don't feel confident in your body or you don't feel confident in your abilities? Maybe you don't feel as smart as this other person, as knowledgeable in career, or maybe you just have some type of insecurity that's more you and not about your boyfriend. So I feel like that's a really important thing. I don't know for sure, if he had been untrustworthy in the past. That's something that you need to think about. With if I can like lean on my own experience, Christopher had experiences in the past where people broke trust with him in relationships. And so even though with me he was starting from a clean slate, he had all of these like previous relationships. And so he kind of just automatically like put it on me. And this girl here said she was kind of controlling and became toxic. And so that's exactly what happened with Christopher and me. He was constantly, like, paranoid that I was talking to someone else or that I was cheating on him, right? And so that's something that he needed to work on his own so that he wouldn't constantly put that on to me. Now, we had to go through a breakup in order for him to work on that, but even when we got back together, he still was not fixed from that. We had this big issue, like, 6 months into our relationship where something happened, and it was nothing that I did wrong, but he misinterpreted something and kind of flipped out, right? Not flipped out, got angry, but just got very sad. So that's something I would encourage you to work on your own. If it is more on your end, work on your own emotional maturity and your relationship with God before trying to repair your relationship with your boyfriend. Maybe even you guys need to take some time apart. I know that's hard to say, and I'm not going to say for sure because I don't know the full context here, but I would just really encourage you to seek the Lord and ask him like, "God, why am I so insecure? Why am I so jealous?" Because if that's the only issue here, you guys could work through this and you've had a great relationship for the past 2 years. This may just be something that's like a bump in the road, and that's understandable for him to get frustrated because, here he is, maybe not doing anything wrong, and you're getting upset and controlling. So that's completely understandable. No one likes to be controlled, especially men. They don't like to be controlled. And I've learned that from me being very controlling with my husband and kind of treating him like a 5-year-old sometimes. So yeah, that's another thing. You can't try to like baby, your partner. That's yeah, you can't do that. Anyway, so if you're questioning if you still have a place in his heart, he should be very clear about your relationship. Maybe it's just your paranoia. Um, I would really just say you have to understand, is this something you need to work on within yourself? If so, go to therapy, seek wise counsel from women who are older than you who can help you. Like you got to do something if it's within yourself and not his problem? Okay, here we have another question. I like your advice on this from your perspective and from God's view. My ex was very religious, and at the time I wasn't. Towards the end of our relationship, I started going to church and following God more, but eventually we broke up. We agreed we'd talk at the end of the year, but my ex blocked me on Instagram. We still have other ways of contact, but we have not have spoken since March. Should I move on or wait and reach out at the end of the year like we agreed? I really love my ex and want to work things out. I forgive them for everything, but I feel like I might just be getting led on. She's the type of woman I've always wanted, yet I don't know what to do anymore. And then also, if I should just leave it and move on, what's the best thing to do so following God? Like, since it's all happened, I've turned to Christ for understanding, but it would be nice to hear from someone else as well. Okay, number one, is the reason you broke up because you were unequally yoked? I just wanted to kind of make that clear. If it is, good for you. I think that's a good idea to take step back and work on your own relationship with God. Whatever the reason was that you ended up breaking up, have you worked on those things before reaching out to this person? Now, I know you said it's the end of the year, so you still have a few months. Um, when you said, should you move on? I don't believe that moving on means you should get in a relationship. I think at this point, you should probably have open hands in this situation of if we get back together, great. If we don't, that's okay too. I trust the Lord. I feel like you should already have kind of moved on in your mind of whatever happens, I will be okay. But with that being said, not seeking out, I don't think seeking out other relationships is what you probably need right now. Um, yeah, I don't know how, let's see. Oh, okay. You haven't spoken since March, so that's a considerable amount of time. Um, when you said so this person said they feel like they might be getting led on. Why do you feel that? If this is the type of woman you've always wanted, but you feel like she's leading you on, that's something that I would be weary of. It seems like you guys have had a clear communication of, "Okay, we're gonna reach out at the end of the year." But if there's, like, leading on going, that's obviously not a very healthy thing, and so I would not support that. Maybe you need to ask her kind of straight up of, like, "Do we need more bound" maybe you need to just ask her of, like, "Hey, are we still going to talk again at the end of the year?" Again, I don't know what you mean by getting let on. And humans are very confusing. You know, we could have emotions of like, oh, I love this person. I want to be with this person. And then a few days later realize, nope, they're not the one for me. And so that's understandable as well. Maybe that's where she came from. Maybe that's where she's, understanding. But I do think there needs to be some clarity in like, is she leading you on? Or is it more so just you're very confused right now, you don't know what to do? Yeah, I would just say to wait. I wouldn't say that you should move on and like intentionally seek out another relationship right now. You should probably still heal and kind of have this open-handedness of if the end of the year you get back together, that's great. And you have put all this work into healing and growing as a person. But if you don't get to back together, it's still not a waste. Like you are growing and healing not for the other person, but so you can become the person that God wants you to be. I would just be careful of that. You're not trying to change for the other person. And this is why my husband and I didn't end up meeting again or didn't end up having a set date to meet because we were kind of worried or he was worried that we would make these temporary changes for the other person instead of long lasting changes for the Lord and surrendering everything to the Lord. Does that make sense? So yeah, that is why I would also be wary of setting a timeline to reach out because you may not be actually healed and then could kind of gaslight yourself into thinking getting into a relationship is exactly what you need just because you saw the other person's face who you love so very much. Yeah, that is what I would say to this. Here is another question. This is one more that I actually just received. This person says, I'm trying to heal and work on myself through this breakup, but I keep on having thoughts of what if I don't entertain any guy, and then if my boyfriend doesn't want to get back with me? Then I might have messed up a potential chance with someone else, but I only want my boyfriend. And I don't want to have these kinds of thoughts at all. I truly want to heal and pray God brings us back together and focus on that. Okay, I'm guessing when this person says my boyfriend, they're saying my ex-boyfriend. So they're having the thought, what if I don't entertain any guy and then my boyfriend doesn't want to get back together with me? Um, okay, and this person basically wants to heal and pray God brings us back together. Okay, here's the thing. I don't think you can can always you can't really pray that you get back together because we are not God. We don't know what's best for us. And so even though you really want to be back together with this person, I think you have to let go the idea of that. Um it seems like surrender and trust is something that you may need to work on and this is something that I definitely needed to work on because I certainly had the thought of, well, what if we don't get back together? Like, am I going to be good enough for any relationship? And I just had to understand that if I wanted to grow and improve for another relationship, I had to get my focus off of getting back together. You should be growing, healing, evolving into the person that God wants you to be, not for the other person, like I said, but for the Lord, to glorify the Lord. And then He can bring you to a place where you're ready to get in a relationship with someone, you're ready for marriage. Going back to this question, I don't think the focus should be on, I want to get back together with this person, I'm praying to get back together with this person. You need to trust that even if you don't get back together with this person, yes, you will still have other people out there that will want to be with you. And maybe you are, and it could also be true that you, aren't the best in relationships. Maybe you have a lot of issues. I had a lot of issues as well. I was very defensive, conflict. I brought up a lot. I constantly was like teetering back and forth between breaking up and not. And I was just a mess, right? And so the Lord allowed me to have time in different seasons of my life to grow and evolve into someone who could, in a more healthy way, handle a relationship. So, if you're worried, "What guy will ever want me?" Get rid of that thought because you are worthy. The Lord has created you with a purpose, and if, it is in your life to get married and that is something that you are called to be, you're called to be married, the Lord will bring someone who is perfect for you. Not perfect, but that is perfect for you. The Lord will bring someone in your life, and it's not something that you have to worry about. And I feel like trying to please man um, will just never lead us in the right direction. What is that verse? Okay, here it says, "For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ." So essentially saying here, you cannot glorify the Lord and still please man. You cannot worry about, oh my gosh, is anyone going to like me? Am I ever going to get married? And glorify the Lord. And I'm not saying this to put you down. I'm just saying like you can get to the point where your identity isn't in marriage, isn't in what other people will think of you. And if you get back together with, your boyfriend, but it's in trusting the Lord and he has great plans for you. I would also meditate on Romans 8:28 where it says the Lord will work all things together for good. We have to believe that he will work all things together for good, not necessarily the good that we may see, but a good that brings peace and love and just so much more and than we could ever imagine. So anyway, definitely seek the Lord during this time, answering to that question, and try to get rid of the prayer of getting back together with your ex. You can give the Lord your desire, but ultimately it should be, Lord, this is your will. Either way, I want peace. Please give me peace. But you also can't just say, this is another thing, you can't just pray for peace, but then do all the things to not help you get peace. So, what I mean by this, if you're praying, Lord, please help me to have peace and to not worry about who I'm going to be in a relationship with. And then you start, maybe stalking people on Instagram that you shouldn't be stalking, or trying to get attention from guys when you go out, or kind of securing guy friends that you could potentially date. Like you have to also take accountability and be like, the Lord can give me peace, but I can also overwrite that by doing the things that I want to do? So we also have to be careful with that as well. I'm pretty sure I answered just about anything, just about everything. There was quite a few things. I think there was a few. There was a few more that I didn't answer, but I do not have the capacity to continue talking. My voice is quite tired, but I do pray that this could be helpful to you. I hope that it could make you feel less alone. Maybe you're experiencing some of the difficult things. There was also a lot of questions on how to get through a breakup. Just blanket statement. What do I do? To that, I would say go back to my last podcast episode, listen to that. It's a full guide for how to get through a breakup. But I hope maybe this could be entertaining if you are not going through a breakup. Maybe you're not even in a relationship, but maybe it could be entertaining or insightful for you for the future. But yeah, my hope is to really encourage and hopefully provide some insight if you're in a season where you're really struggling. I know that I really enjoyed listening to podcasts on breakups when I was going through my breakup because it was just very comforting and very helpful. And so maybe I'm that podcast for you. And if that's true, that's great. And I'm very glad to be here. But if you have any questions, any questions about anything I said in here, feel free to comment below. Make sure you subscribe if you are on YouTube. Follow the podcast if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It really helps other people to see this video. And yeah, I'm also posting on Instagram and active on there. So if you don't follow me there, go check it out. I'm always, posting something that may be relatable with you, insightful at all. I try the very least. And sometimes I'm just on the struggle bus as well and just going along with you guys. So yeah, but with all that being said, thank you for listening. And if there's anything else you would add to a question I answered, please let me know because I I love constructive criticism, when it's helpful. But those are all my thoughts. I love you guys, and I pray that whatever season you're in right now, whether you're going through a relationship, you're single, you're going through a breakup, that you can just seek the Lord and you can, just be with Him in prayer, read your Bible, get in community, and yeah, just do all the things that help you create a life you love. It may be hard right now, maybe you're going through a difficult season, but you can still have peace. And yeah, I pray that you can have peace wherever you are.